Good day, Mr. Brian Greene. Welcome to the Cybersecurity Council podcast. You are the president and founder of this organization. Welcome to your own show, my friend.
Thank you.
I am hoping today that we can talk about how you found cyber, how you founded the Cybersecurity Council, and maybe even some hopes and dreams for the future. Where is this organization going to go? My very first question for you is, what did you have for breakfast?
Coffee.
Coffee. That is enlightenment in the world of cyber.
Yeah, okay.
And are you juggling any life events right now?
Just raising two awesome boys, which is a ton of fun. 4.5 and a 2.5-year-old. They get cooler every day.
Oh, I bet they're keeping you very busy.
They are.
Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the Cybersecurity Council. Please introduce yourself, my friend.
Sure. Brian Greene. I've been in cybersecurity, security, software, across web security, infrastructure security, email security, and going into some new stuff too here soon for the last decade plus. I've been in enterprise sales for the most part, and just really take a liking to helping defenders through valuable technology do their jobs in a more efficient and effective way. And it's become a huge passion of mine, which has led to the creation of the Cybersecurity Council and why you and I are sitting here having this conversation here as well in this podcast.
Please lay out for us, where did the Cybersecurity Council come from? What is its origin story? How did you find your way to being a president and founder?
Well, that's a long answer, but when I got to Austin back in, 2018, I realized over a period of a couple of years that this was becoming the sister city to the Bay, and that there was a lot of people post-COVID to moving themselves here, moving their companies here, and I just did a quick look at okay, how many security leaders live in Austin in the main metro area, and there were a lot, hundreds, right? And so I said, well, why don't we? Is anyone getting these people together to talk about best practices and lessons learned and develop personal and professional relationships that will help them in a lot of parts of their life? And I couldn't really find that. There was some stuff that was virtual, but nothing that got people together face to face. And this was, again, post-COVID, which was kind of odd to even have a thought to do that. But I did, and so I just said, hey, I'm gonna start this myself. Paid someone a few $100s to create a logo because I didn't know how to do that, and started inviting people, asking people, is this something you would be interested in? And the feedback was phenomenal, and off we went.
You pointed out sister cities, San Francisco, Austin, Silicon Valley, Silicon Hills.
All right.
There is expertise here, and you have been trying to build, I would say, a leadership-focused organization and really making a community space for the cyber leaders and cyber allies here in Austin.
Absolutely.
Origin story. We are now the Cybersecurity Council, but you started this organization as the Austin Cybersecurity Council. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yeah, so it was originally focused on Austin, and still is in large part. We do these events here, every quarter privately. It's a lunch on a Friday. We get a speaker of interest that comes and talks to our group about, something that's very relevant to the group. The range of people that are involved go all the way from manager to C-level, right? And the requirement is you just have to manage a group of security practitioners. That can be 2 people, it can be 200 people, right? And so we kind of set out with that because we wanted to keep the authenticity of leadership, guidance, mentorship, expertise, and have that really be the only people that were involved in the group, and not water it down with others that weren't in that focus. What I realized is many of the topics that we were talking about in these events were not topics that people in Austin only cared about. They were topics that are national topics in security, and in many ways international topics as well. And that's over the 2.5 years that this has existed. That's obviously changed. We were early talking about. I remember our first meeting was Zane Lackey, my friend, one of the co-founders of Signal Sciences. He came to tell us the founder's story, which was very interesting. I mean, the Signal Sciences story is really cool. But then, our most recent event was a panel moderated by the CISO of Marquetta, Heather Gann Evans, on elevating security to the board and to the C-suite, which included the panel, longtime CEO of Splunk, Doug Merritt, now CEO of Aviatrix, the CFO of Cloudflare, Thomas Seifert, and a partner, Casper Wong from Sapphire Ventures, which was our sponsor and a massive VC. And this is a much bigger, broader topic that every CISO at every company cares about. And so it's really become this vastly wider thing than just people in Austin. And so I thought to myself, well, let's take out Austin and just make it the Cybersecurity Council. And it's spun into things like you approaching me and saying, hey, why don't we do a virtual version of your Cybersecurity Council, but via podcast?
I'm absolutely thrilled to be a part of this team and a part of this organization, and I'm looking forward to how we're going to grow it. This will be a brilliant opportunity, not just for us, but for the community. Could you tell us a little bit about the mission and purpose of the Cybersecurity Council? Now, you've hinted at it. Cyber leadership, bringing in some key people, making sure that these practitioners and leaders have the opportunity to enrich each other.
That's right.
But would you like to say more?
Yeah, I think it's that, but it's also, it feels like the environment has changed a lot in the last 12 to 18 months, specifically for CISOs, but maybe even more so for larger InfoSec people. The organizations are under scrutiny. We've got all these new regulations coming from the SEC. Many of these things are kind of unknowns. What's a material breach, right? Defined by the SEC. And so it's always been a very difficult job to be a security leader. I think it's gotten more difficult in the last 12 to 18 months. And so as we wade through these new waters of like, everyone's trying to figure this out on the fly, what's better than to have a group of your peers that you can bounce ideas off of, hear their experience, because many leaders have been through different experiences than others. One of our local members is Tim Brown. Everyone knows he's been through a very different experience than many other people. So being able to have that perspective and expertise shared with a community, both local and maybe even larger than that, is very valuable in my opinion, and based on what leaders have told me as of late.
Okay. I'd like to summarize a little bit of what you just said. So you fully endorsed the principles of community enrichment across the board, but you also described how cyber is becoming more difficult. Cyber is becoming more difficult. It's becoming more entangled. And you've brought in guest speakers like Tim Brown. You've brought in guest speakers like people with that are lawyers and they have regulatory experience in cyber, and they are giving our community advice. How many members do we have in the organization right now?
Right now, we just eclipsed 100. I think we're roughly 125, 130. This morning, I sent a few more messages out to folks. I've got a constant rotation of like updates for new leaders that pop into Austin via LinkedIn. And I sent a few more messages out today about an event that we're planning to do in late July, early August, post DEF CON and Black Hat. And I already got 3 or 4 responses back just this morning. That's what's cool about this. Every time we get another event scheduled, I send out a bunch more invitations, and then we get like 10, 15, 20 new group members. So yeah, we're at 125, 130. We'll be at 150 before the next event, 200 before the end of the year.
Website, LinkedIn, about to begin delivering content to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and other places. So there's lots of ways for the community to hear from us.
Correct.
We will continue producing events and looking at those types of community engagement. You've got a couple of things in the works there. Would you like to walk us through either what you're hoping for from the virtual events like the podcast, what you're hoping for in the future and upcoming community events?
Yeah, I think I can do both. Where we started is with the in-person events. The one that's coming, I couldn't be more excited about. I can't say too much about it yet because we don't have it penned and we don't have the speakers completely nailed down. We have one of 2 Actually, I should say 2 of 3. We have the moderator nailed. We have one of the speakers nailed, and I asked this morning about the other one. But they're 2 of the most notorious names, and I don't know if notorious is the right word to use, but 2 of the more well-known names in CISO world for a lot of very public reasons. And they're going to come and basically talk to our group about what CISOs need to know, operating today in the environment that we're all operating in based on what they've gone through. And then past that, we'll probably do maybe even a workshop off of that event. I've seen that go well, where we do a specific topic and then a workshop off of it that's more focused on the people that actually have to deal with the topic at hand. So we're thinking about that for the fall. Got some really cool ideas about maybe having like a full day and a friend's ranch that's got all this really cool stuff outside of Austin. But then we've got obviously this podcast, which I think will be great because it'll allow us to connect to people that aren't just in Austin. Yes, we've got all these great people in Austin that we want to talk to and that we know and that we've gotten to develop relationships with. But I also, from the 10 years of being a partnership-oriented seller, know all these people on both coasts that could come to this, and so do you, right? And provide a perspective and insight that we're maybe not going to get from somebody that's here in Austin. So I'm stoked about that. And I think the podcast can be more frequent, where we do an event every quarter in person. This can be consistent. This can be a lot more active.
I'm certainly partial to the podcast because I'm going to be trying to help drive that and maximize that. I'm really looking forward to all of the guests that we are going to have. One of the things that really excites me about the podcast is part of the mission of this community is to elevate the voices of the cyber leaders. So when we have special guests on the podcast, we are going to make sure they have the opportunity to say what they need to say, and we are going to elevate and promote them and make sure that that message doesn't just get out to the community, but if it needs to move farther beyond that, and we can be a vehicle to help that happen, I'm looking forward to that. You and I have put together our list of people that we will be inviting, and over this summer of 2024, this podcast should come together with CISOs and cyber leaders from aerospace, from government, from cybersecurity companies. This should be a really fun experience, not just for myself and not just for you, our president, but the community.
The thing that's made our group successful is we've kept it focused on practitioner leaders and the problems that they face and trying to help provide solutions to those problems or expertise or knowledge or whatever it might be. And this is, again, just going to be a virtual extension of that. Many podcasts, eventually when they get big enough, they need sponsors, and sponsors typically have influence over content. If the best we can stay away from that, I think the better. I don't necessarily, it helps people learn about vendors, and vendors are usually the sponsors, whatever. But I don't know that I want this to really be something that a practitioner sits down and listens to and says, man, I got a few grains of awesome knowledge from that. And I didn't have to hear a vendor's pitch as a part of it.
I would like us to be able to do not just in-depth interviews, but quality interviews focusing on the cyber. So I'm fully aligned to what you are trying to create and the vision that you're offering here. For us to become something like investigative reporting is probably a step beyond what we can do, but I'm going to bring my 110%, and I'm going to get us to some strong content. So there should be some beautiful alignments here. Okay, Brian, I have a question about the journey. You talked about the Austin Cybersecurity Council, and now it's professionalizing and it's becoming the Cybersecurity Council. When did you know this is going to work? Yeah. I am seeing the engagement.
Yeah, I think obviously the first messages I was sending to the first 30 to 50 people were all received really well. I'm like, yes, we need this. Yes, I just moved here. I don't know anyone. Like all the things. And that was validating to some extent. But I think that first event that we had, again, I mentioned with Zane Lackey, founder of Signal Sciences, we had 20 people there, which isn't a big number, but it was still a good turnout. And what happened at the end of that event was assigned to me. Anwar Kazi, who's become a friend, came up to me and said, I want to meet with you. I want to have brunch with you or drinks with you or coffee with you. I want to bring my wife. I want you to bring your wife sometime soon outside of this. And I went, sure, awesome. And I'm like, well, that to me was like, okay, just that small example. I've already gathered a new relationship and friend and person in the community that I didn't have prior to doing this. And this is going to happen not just for me, but for everyone in this group, most likely. And so I'm that immediately hit with me like, oh, okay, this is going to work.
I like what you're saying. I chose cyber just as much as cyber chose me. I like cyber people. Community matters. Have there been any hard or harder moments in building the community?
There haven't really been any elements that were too difficult. They were challenging would probably be the better term. I think I always keep like a really big focus and concern about, is the content going to be relevant and interesting, and finding the speakers to deliver that content isn't always the easiest thing. Finding sponsors is always, especially in an economy where things aren't so great, you have to go get, a decent amount of money from someone to pay for the event. There are a lot of companies out there that are excited to sponsor something that's as beneficial as the Cybersecurity Council is for the InfoSec leadership community, and then get access to those leaders for a day, a couple hours, to be able to develop relationships and tell them a little bit about what they do.
Where would you like the Cybersecurity Council to be in 6 months, 2 years, 5 years? Is there a part of your vision that you're not yet willing to talk about? It's just too far into the hope and dreams category. What do you have to say?
I don't think there is. I think you can't get away from the core of it. It can't ever. I love the saying, and everyone knows it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Right? You can't get away from what built value for the Cybersecurity Council. We have to do that. We have to do it well. We have to continue to pound that value proposition. But then what else can we do to help these people, this group of people? These podcasts are one thing. I've extended and kind of developed my network in the executive search and staffing realm to help when the time comes that, hey, I'm either not employed, which unfortunately that's a thing right now that's, I think, higher than normal in our industry. And then B, I'm looking for something different. I'm not happy in my current position and I want something else. So helping people through the group, but also through some affiliation to executive staffing firms, right? We've got some exciting ideas about BCSO stuff that you obviously can do that I can't do. And then, I think these events can get a lot bigger. I see a semi-annual full day, multi-day thing where it gets much more like a conference than it does like a singular event. But I see that as like a thing we can do in the not too distant future, 12, 18 months off.
I'd like to ask you a little bit more about your journey to being a president and a founder. You've talked about sales enablement, productizing cybersecurity. You've seen a large number of things. You also have a successful exit on your resume. That is key. One of the most famous books in the entrepreneurial space is Build, Scale, Exit, Repeat, Exit Step 3. And in many cases, people with exit on their resume, it's not just advocating for themselves and their capabilities. It's telling the people that talk to them, this person knows how to run an organization. This person knows how to be a part of a level of success that on its own attracts investment. I'm sure we're going to explore exits in depth as we get into the podcast, but could you give us the headlines? What happened for you?
By no means. I was the first 20 employee at Signal Sciences, which at the time was a next generation web application firewall, host-based in the web or application server, which was very different than what existed at that time. The pizza boxes, as one of our founders used to love to call them, with Imperva or F5, And then, the Akamai's of the world who had an edge-based web application firewall. They were all very static, regex rules, et cetera. This was more dynamic and down at the host layer. So kind of last line of defense if bad guys have gotten that far. It was super appealing. And it was built by 3 guys that were working together at Etsy who were in different disciplines: InfoSec, software engineering, product management. They were all just awesome guys. And I don't mean to use past tense. They all are awesome guys. And I'm friends with each one of them today. And they just knew how to build a business, even though they were all first-time founders. I mean, I've been a part of many startups now, and some go well and some don't. And that one went extremely well. I was there for 5.5 years. I was the first enterprise seller at the company. Was the highest grossing sales rep at the company for the 5.5 years I was there. And just really got to know those guys well. And they built a tremendous work family early. And obviously, as you scale, you get more people. It's not as tight knit, but early on, it was extremely tight. We operated out of this little house in Venice, right near the beach, Silicon Beach, in LA. And it was so cool. It was so much fun. It was by far the best work experience that I've had. And we were acquired in 2020. I think the fall, October, for $775 million by Fastly. And it was just, I think one of the things that I take away from that is, and it was a different time, they raised really well. They went through A and B and rounds and didn't overraise. I think many companies have made a huge mistake in 2021, 2022, just overraised, just got way too much money, got way too much big of a valuation, and then have had to perform underneath that, and that's hard.
There are so many elements to a raise, to include what is your return obligation to the investor. An underlying characteristic is how much needs to go back to the investor at the end of this or in stages. And that can deeply impact how you spend your money. OpEx, CapEx, people, features, sales. Even choosing your investors is a partnership, because how do they invest? What's their methodology? What's their strategy? What are they going to allow you to do? And of course, in stages in and of themselves, they're self-descriptive. Angel investor stage, money is for this. Series A, money is for this. Series B, money is for this. And everyone, the team, the investor, everybody has to understand all of the commitments and have roadmaps that unite the vision with what's actually going to occur on the ground. And you've been through that ringer. And you've been through that ringer more than once. There's a successful exit there, but there's a lot to say. And I am hopeful that our community can bring that kind of investment and business knowledge to the cyber professionals. Because let's face it, cyber professionals are often still growing in the knowledge that they need in that space. Are you willing to name some of the first guests that you would like to have on the podcast? Do you want to keep it secret because you're still trying to grab them?
I think we probably, what I'll say is topics, like one of the topics that I'm most excited about is, again, in a decade of being in this industry and in the time frame that cybersecurity leaders typically stay at any one company before they either move to another one, get promoted and move to another one, is pretty tight. I think it's like a 2-year window for CISOs. So you see a lot of movement. And I've got groups that I worked with, teams that were customers of mine at places like Netflix and Turner Broadcasting, where these individuals who were managers or directors or even individual contributors now, 8, 9, 10 years later, are CISOs for publicly traded companies, are, running entire security engineering groups at large organizations. Some of which were just acquired by IBM. Shout out Will Bankston. I did name one person. Will's a great buddy, was kind enough also to invite me to write a chapter in his book with Mark, the CISO Brex, called The Security Path, which I just did, and they just published a few months back. They wanted a salesperson's perspective on their security journey, which I was surprised about, but also flattered. Building, successful teams lead to successful leaders. What a great topic. And to get those, almost have a reunion right? Of, in my opinion, of like those teams that are now at 3 different companies, and have them all together and talk about what was so special about those experiences that led to them being able to go off and run much larger organizations, much larger teams.
There's an element of cybersecurity that I really love, and that's people in cyber want more people to be in cyber. So it is a very not just inclusive group, but a group of people that is open to outreach. Now, that doesn't mean that if you go to a cybersecurity conference that the CISO of the biggest company is going to let you in on his little signal group with his best friends.
Okay.
But there is a path to be within the trusted circle, if you will. Cyber will allow you to find your way to mentors, coaches, personal growth, personal opportunities. Part of that is it's because the community is inclusive, and part of it is because cyber is understaffed and overwhelmed, and you have to rise to the occasion. So your boss is going to be like, please, you're included. Let's have a seat at the table.
We're all in this. I thank every single person in the room. I thank them up front for being the defender of, our infrastructure, our systems, our data, my family's data, my friends' data, because that's every day. That's what you wake up as a cybersecurity practitioner and leader doing. Your job from the company you're employed by is to protect all of these things. And that's a really big job. No one wants to see any company in this country attacked and breached by a nation state that doesn't have this country's best interests in mind.
Right.
Nobody wants to see that, right? So like, how do we help everyone in the industry to keep those type of things from happening? So yes, there's a massive, in my opinion, inclusivity. We want to make everyone better element to our industry. And I think it's only gotten bigger and more passionate in the last 12, 24 months.
Brian, I also want to talk a little bit more about some of your origin story. Brian, you told us about sales enablement, productizing cybersecurity, being a part of a successful exit. I want our audience to know you're also a Division I football player.
Well, I was.
You were, correct. You might be aged out of that class at the moment, but an experience like that informs you not only as a person, but that's got to pull in life lessons that you're still applying to cyber and to sales today. Do you want to tell us about those experiences? Do you have anything you'd like to offer?
Yeah, I mean, first, football is a sport that's been examined pretty heavily in a lot of not so great ways. And all of those health concerns are completely valid. I was actually asked by a very well-off friend recently, would you let your boys play football? And I responded and said, well, that's really not my decision. It's theirs. And I won't let them play to a certain age. When they get to a certain age, if they want to play, then I'll explain to them all the bad things that can happen if they do, which include concussions and broken bones and torn ligaments and all the things, surgeries, right? And if they still want to play, it's their choice to play. I think that there is no, there are other team sports that are similar to some extent, but you get 80-something guys in a college locker room, less than that in a high school locker room, less than that in an NFL locker room, and everybody's from somewhere different. Their personalities are different. Their backgrounds are different. Everybody has a different story. And you have to work together as a group. So you learn so much in your teenage years prior to going into the working world about leadership, how to follow, how to have discipline, how to be on time for things. Like all these things that just totally go into the working world when you get there are already in your DNA. You learn how to get to lose and have to come back the next week and try to win. We did a lot of losing at Duke when I was there. It was very unfortunate. But that's just the truth. We played against a lot of really great ACC teams that were full of NFL players. We did not have that many NFL players. I was one of those non-NFL players. But I think that, it's just a great sport, and then it teaches you a lot about what to do after sport and how to act and interact in business. And then it also teaches you, as I said, leadership is a dynamic thing. And I think it's hard to know how to lead when you've never done it before. And there are good leaders and there are bad leaders. And what I learned in my time, specifically playing football at Duke, is you can't be just a lead by example leader. That doesn't work in business. In my opinion, you also have to lead by, through your voice. You have to be willing to say the hard thing to someone who reports to you, someone who's a peer, someone who's a superior. And if you can't do that, if you can't openly communicate about what's wrong, what's right, what needs to be changed, in business, then to me, you're just a lead by example person. Well, that's great. And that's good. And that's needed. You need to show an example to the rest of your team or organization, but you also have to be willing to say the things that other people won't say. That's why you're a leader. And so I think it's both. I think I took that away from my experience at Duke. Like, yes, you have to lead by example, but you also have to lead through your voice.
When I'm in a position where I'm building a cybersecurity or an information security team, governance, risk compliance, you name it, one of the first things I'm telling a new team member is I'm looking for your coachability. I'm going to try to help us both focus, but I'm also going to need you to adapt. There's going to be iterations to get it right, but we have to overcome, we have to get better. Let's say somebody discovers the Cybersecurity Council tomorrow, and they say, Brian, this looks like a brilliant organization. I'd like to be a part of the community. How can I become involved? What do you tell them?
It's as easy as, doing something simple, like connecting with me on LinkedIn. That way we can develop a line of communication. I'll just grab the email that you prefer that we use for the events that we're going to do. You can also hit the new website that we have, right? www.thecybersecuritycouncil.com. You can enter your information in there. We'll take it and we'll obviously reach out when we have events. If there is a podcast topic that you're interested in speaking to us about, you can email either one of us via our cybersecurity email. But again, you have to have that criteria of running at least a team of cybersecurity focused practitioners. We've been very particular about trying to keep leaders from security vendors or leaders from consulting firms, or you name it, any sort of professional service. Yes, they are focused on cybersecurity, but the core of what we need in the group and what our group has asked us to put in the group is their peers. They want people focused on cyber, InfoSec, that manage teams, that run organizations.
If they would like to be involved at a slightly higher level, are there any particular magic words? Could they say, Brian, I want to help you put on an event. Brian, I'd like to be a guest speaker. If you would help them get one more step down the road, what would you tell them?
For me, what I said earlier that's difficult about the group itself is finding speakers that are relevant, topics of interest that people can come in and speak to our group about. So if you are someone who is talking to cybersecurity, information security leaders regularly about a specific topic that is of interest to the larger community at this point in time, please reach out to me. I would love nothing more than to have people coming at me saying, hey, I've done these 2 talks recently at these 2 conferences. Here they are, and I'd love to talk to your group. We would love to have you. If you're a sponsor, if you're out there and you're wanting to get in front of somewhere between 25 and 60 security leaders at every one of these events, we need sponsors. So anybody that is interested in that, please reach out. We need sponsors. We need speakers. I can then go find venues.
You found your way to the name, the Cybersecurity Council. For me, that name is auspicious. It is suggesting, if you will, strength. It's suggesting competence. You have to have a bit of courage to be like, this is my name. This is what I want the organization to be in the world. There's a credibility just from the name. Where did you find the courage in a sea of incredibly important cyber practitioners out there? You're like, I can carry the torch for the Cybersecurity Council. Did that come from football? Did that come from cyber? Did that come from Brian? Where did that particular faith come from?
Really all three, and then some other areas. One of which is like, just kind of being stupid and brave all at once. To me, it's like I wanted to encompass what the group was going to be, both at the beginning and at the end. And I thought to myself, well, even if it only ends up being 10 or 15 people, a cybersecurity council can be a small group of people around a round table talking regularly about things. It can also be a hundreds, thousands of people group that really becomes a powerful and prominent part of our larger industry. And so it just felt like a good way to encompass even a small or a large contingent of practitioners and leaders. And yeah, the transition was pretty easy. We, as you mentioned, we originally had the Austin Cybersecurity Council. And it was really easy once I realized that it had expanded out of Austin to just cut Austin and put the Cybersecurity Council on it. It was a natural transition. So that was kind of dumb luck in a way. And I, at the time, the logo had, the Lone Star to represent Texas in it. And another easy transition on the logo was just, okay, this isn't just the state of Texas anymore or just Austin. This is the United States of America. And so we added the U.S. flag on the logo, which I love personally.
Well, I'm reaching across the table with a fist bump here. Let's get this done. Let's let this adventure continue. Brian, president, founder of the Cybersecurity Council, humble origins in Austin, Texas. Thank you for being here and sharing the beginning and the middle, and maybe even the hints at where we're going in the future. It's gonna be great. Welcome to the Cybersecurity Council. This council strives to showcase unique cybersecurity leadership stories. Its mission is to demystify and simplify cybersecurity across the entire business landscape. Best practices, lessons learned, operational recommendations, it's all here. Brought to you by the Cybersecurity Council, LLC, Brian Greene and myself, Scott Brammer, will be your hosts. We have come in from the cyber wilderness, not just to share what we have learned, but to find and elevate some of the most important voices in cyber. Brian is a former Division I college football player who has experience across many cybersecurity software startups. He has a successful exit on his resume too. He's also the founder and president of this very community, the Cybersecurity Council. Myself, Scott Brammer, I'm a former Marine and active CISO, and I have 3 patents in cyber and risk. As hosts, we are here to elevate best practices and strengthen the cyber community, both for the community itself and its allies. The Cybersecurity Council has had auspicious beginnings here in the Austin, Texas community, but we are already going worldwide. Everyone should be a cyber practitioner. The views expressed on this podcast, either by us or by our guests, are our own, and they do not necessarily reflect the view of our organizations. This podcast is intended as a forum for professional knowledge, but it is not legal or regulatory advice. Always consult your legal professionals for legal and regulatory matters. And now,
assemble the council.